The morning sun cast long shadows across the deck of the USS Northwind as Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood at the rail, watching the endless blue horizon. The warship had been her home for 8 months, cutting through Pacific waters on a classified mission that kept the crew on edge. What none of them knew was that this would be Sarah's last day aboard, and her departure would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of naval protocol. Sarah had joined the Navy 5 years earlier with dreams of serving her country and proving that women could excel in any military role. Her expertise in underwater acoustics had earned her a position aboard the Northwind, where she monitored submarine movements and analyzed sonar data. She was one of only 3 women among the ship's crew of 180. But she had earned the respect of her colleagues through her skill and dedication. The trouble began 3 weeks earlier when intelligence reports suggested enemy submarines were operating in their patrol zone. Sarah's job became crucial as she worked around the clock, listening for the distinctive sounds that would reveal a submarine's presence. Her ears were trained to detect the slightest anomaly in the ocean's symphony, and her analysis had already helped the fleet avoid 2 potential ambushes. But Sarah carried a secret that weighed heavily on her heart. Her younger brother Michael served aboard the submarine USS Blackfin, which operated in the same waters. The siblings had joined the Navy together, inspired by their grandfather's stories of World War II service. They had promised their parents they would look out for each other. But military assignments had kept them apart for months at a time. The Blackfin was part of a wolf pack conducting deep reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence on enemy naval movements. Michael served as a sonar operator, much like his sister, and their shared expertise had created a special bond between them. They communicated through coded messages hidden in routine naval communications, a practice that violated regulations but provided comfort to both siblings. Captain Reynolds, the Northwind's commanding officer, was a career naval officer known for his strict adherence to protocol. He had initially been skeptical about having women aboard his ship, but Sarah's performance had won him over. He relied on her expertise and trusted her judgment in matters of submarine detection. What he didn't know was that Sarah faced an impossible conflict between her duty and her family loyalty. The crisis began when Sarah intercepted communications suggesting that the Blackfin had been detected by enemy forces. The submarine was operating under radio silence, unaware that its position had been compromised. Standard protocol required Sarah to report all intelligence through proper channels, but doing so would reveal her brother's location to the enemy. She faced a choice that no one should have to make. Lieutenant Commander James Morrison, the ship's executive officer, noticed Sarah's distress during the evening briefing. Morrison had served with distinction for 15 years and had developed an instinct for reading people. He suspected Sarah was hiding something, but he couldn't imagine the magnitude of her dilemma. His concerns would prove to be well-founded as events unfolded. The enemy submarines were part of a larger operation designed to disrupt Allied shipping lanes. They operated in coordinated groups, using advanced stealth technology that made detection difficult. Sarah's work had identified patterns in their movements, but she realized that sharing this information would put the Blackfin directly in harm's way. As night fell, Sarah stood alone in the communications room, staring at the classified report she had prepared. The document contained vital intelligence that could save Allied lives and prevent enemy attacks. But it also contained information that would expose her brother's submarine to certain destruction. Her hands trembled as she faced the most difficult decision of her life. The Northwind's crew operated with military precision, unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. Sailors went about their duties, maintaining the ship's systems and standing watch in the endless cycle of naval life. The ship's galley served dinner to tired crews, while officers planned the next day's operations. None of them suspected that their colleague was wrestling with a choice that would define her character forever: Sarah's training had prepared her for many situations, but not for this moral crossroads. Military doctrine emphasized duty above all else, but family loyalty ran deep in her heart. She thought about her parents, who had raised her and Michael to always protect each other. She remembered her grandfather's stories about making difficult choices during wartime, decisions that haunted him for the rest of his life. The classified communications she monitored revealed that enemy submarines were closing in on Allied positions. Time was running out, and every minute of delay could cost lives. But Sarah also knew that her brother's submarine was operating in the same area, invisible to everyone except the enemy forces that had detected it. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like the ocean depths her brother navigated. As the midnight watch began, Sarah made her decision. She would not file the report that would doom her brother's submarine. Instead, she would find another way to serve her country and protect the people she loved. What she didn't know was that her choice would trigger events that would test the limits of military loyalty and family bonds. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything Sarah believed about duty, honor, and sacrifice. Her silent departure from the warship would be just the beginning of a story that would resonate through the fleet for years to come. The emergency alarm pierced the morning silence aboard the USS Blackfin as the submarine's crew scrambled to battle stations. Lieutenant Michael Chen rushed to his sonar station, unaware that his sister had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect him. The submarine's captain, Commander David Harrison, received urgent orders that would force him to make a decision that went against everything he had been trained to do. Michael had been monitoring radio frequencies when he detected unusual activity from the surface fleet. His training told him to maintain radio silence, but something in the coded transmissions made him uneasy. The Blackfin was operating at periscope depth, gathering intelligence on enemy naval movements when the first emergency signal reached them. Commander Harrison was a decorated officer with 23 years of submarine service. He had navigated through some of the Navy's most dangerous missions and had never violated a direct order. His submarine carried a crew of 96 men, and he took responsibility for every life aboard his vessel. The orders he received that morning would test his principles like never before. The message came through encrypted channels. Lieutenant Sarah Chen had abandoned her post aboard the USS Northwind and was missing in action. Intelligence suggested she had stolen classified documents before disappearing from the warship during the night watch. A massive search and rescue operation was underway, but Sarah had vanished without a trace. Michael's hands shook as he processed the information about his sister. Military communications revealed that Sarah was suspected of espionage and had been declared a fugitive from military justice. The accusation seemed impossible to Michael, who knew his sister's character better than anyone. Sarah would never betray her country or abandon her post without a compelling reason. The truth was more complex than anyone realized. Sarah had indeed left the warship, but not as a deserter or spy. She had discovered that her intelligence reports would expose the Blackfin's position to enemy forces, and she chose to disappear rather than file information that would doom her brother's submarine. Her sacrifice was misunderstood by everyone except Michael, who began to piece together the real story. Commander Harrison found himself in an unprecedented situation. His orders were clear: continue the current mission and avoid all contact with surface vessels, including friendly forces. But his sonar operator was the brother of a suspected traitor, and military protocol demanded that Michael be relieved of duty and transferred immediately. The problem was that the Blackfin was deep in enemy territory, with no safe way to transfer personnel. The enemy submarine threat was growing more serious by the hour. Intelligence reports indicated that foreign submarines were using advanced technology to coordinate attacks on Allied shipping. The Blackfin's mission was to gather information about these new capabilities, but the crew's morale was shaken by the news about Sarah's disappearance. Michael struggled to focus on his duties while worrying about his sister. He analyzed sonar readings and monitored communications, but his mind kept returning to Sarah's situation. He began to notice patterns in the data that others had missed, connections that revealed the true scope of the enemy operation. His sister's training had taught him to look beyond the obvious, and now that skill became crucial. The breakthrough came when Michael detected a series of underwater signals that didn't match any known submarine signatures. The patterns were too regular to be natural phenomena, but they didn't correspond to any enemy submarines in the intelligence databases. Michael realized he was looking at evidence of a new type of underwater vessel, something that could revolutionize naval warfare. Commander Harrison faced pressure from fleet headquarters to return to base and deal with the security concerns raised by Sarah's disappearance. Intelligence officers wanted to question Michael about his sister's activities and ensure that no classified information had been compromised. But Harrison knew that leaving their patrol area would allow the enemy submarines to operate freely. The submarine's crew was divided in their opinions about Sarah's actions. Some believed the accusations of espionage, while others defended her reputation based on her previous service. The tension affected everyone aboard the submarine, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and uncertainty that made their dangerous mission even more challenging. Michael's discovery of the unknown underwater signals became the key to understanding the enemy's new capabilities. He worked frantically to decode the patterns, knowing that time was running out. The signals suggested that enemy forces were preparing for a major offensive that would catch the Allied fleet completely off guard. Commander Harrison made his decision based on the intelligence Michael had uncovered. The submarine would continue its mission despite orders to return to base. He knew that violating direct orders would end his career, but he also knew that the information they were gathering could save thousands of lives. The crew prepared for extended operations in hostile waters. The enemy submarines were using the new underwater vessels as communication relays, creating a network that allowed them to coordinate attacks across vast distances. Michael's analysis revealed that the system was vulnerable to disruption, but only if the Blackfin could position itself correctly. The submarine began a dangerous approach to the enemy communication network. Meanwhile, the search for Sarah continued across the Pacific. Naval investigators followed false leads and pursued theories that painted her as everything from a foreign agent to a mentally unstable officer. None of them suspected that she had sacrificed her career and reputation to protect her brother's submarine from certain destruction. The Blackfin's crew worked together despite the uncertainty surrounding their mission. They trusted Commander Harrison's leadership and believed in the importance of their work, even if they didn't fully understand the consequences of their actions. The submarine moved deeper into enemy territory, guided by Michael's analysis of the underwater signals. As the submarine approached the enemy communication network, Michael detected new threats closing in on their position. Enemy submarines were converging on the area, drawn by the same signals that had led the Blackfin to its target. The crew prepared for battle, knowing that their violation of orders had put them in extreme danger. Commander Harrison opened sealed orders that revealed the true scope of their mission. The Blackfin was not just gathering intelligence. They were positioned to strike at the heart of the enemy communication system, but success would require perfect timing and the courage to act when the moment came. The submarine's fate would depend on decisions made by people who had never met Sarah Chen, but whose lives had been touched by her sacrifice. The USS Blackfin hung motionless in the dark waters, 300 feet below the surface, every crew member holding their breath as enemy submarines passed overhead. Commander Harrison watched the sonar display as Michael tracked multiple hostile contacts, his sister's training evident in every precise calculation. The violation of orders that had brought them to this moment was about to be justified in ways none of them could have imagined. Sarah Chen sat in a small fishing boat 200 miles from her abandoned post, monitoring radio communications on equipment she had borrowed from sympathetic fishermen. She had not deserted her country but had chosen exile to to protect her brother's submarine from intelligence reports that would have doomed the Blackfin. Her sacrifice had given Michael and his crew the chance they needed to complete their mission. The enemy communication network that Michael had discovered proved to be more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. Foreign submarines were using underwater drones to create a web of communication relays that allowed them to coordinate attacks across thousands of miles of ocean. The Blackfin was the only Allied vessel in position to disrupt this system, but doing so would require them to remain in enemy territory far longer than their orders permitted. Michael's expertise in underwater acoustics became the key to understanding the enemy's new technology. He mapped the communication network by analyzing sound patterns and signal timing, creating a detailed picture of how the enemy submarines coordinated their operations. His work revealed that the system had a central control node that could be targeted and disabled. Commander Harrison faced the most difficult decision of his naval career. Fleet headquarters continued to order the Blackfin to return to base immediately, but Harrison knew that leaving would allow the enemy to launch a coordinated attack on Allied shipping lanes. He chose to maintain radio silence and continue the mission, effectively cutting his submarine off from naval command. The crew of the Blackfin understood the gravity of their situation. They were violating direct orders and operating without support in hostile waters. But they also understood the importance of their mission and trusted their commander's judgment. Morale remained high despite the danger, as every sailor recognized the opportunity to strike a decisive blow against enemy forces. Sarah's location remained unknown to naval authorities, but she continued to monitor fleet communications from her fishing boat hideout. She learned about the Blackfin's situation and realized that her sacrifice had achieved its purpose. Michael's submarine was still operational and positioned to complete a mission that could change the course of the war. The enemy communication node was protected by multiple submarine patrols, making any approach extremely dangerous. Michael tracked the patrol patterns and identified brief windows when the Blackfin could move closer to the target. The submarine began a series of careful maneuvers, using underwater terrain to mask their approach. Commander Harrison's violation of orders attracted attention from the highest levels of naval command. Admiral Patricia Russo, commander of the Pacific Fleet, personally demanded explanations for the Blackfin's failure to return to base. But Harrison maintained radio silence, knowing that any communication would reveal their position to enemy forces monitoring naval frequencies. The truth about Sarah's disappearance began to emerge as naval investigators examined her final communications. They discovered coded messages between the siblings that revealed Sarah's knowledge of the Blackfin's mission. Intelligence officers realized that Sarah had not betrayed her country, but had sacrificed her career to protect classified information. Michael's analysis of the enemy communication system revealed a critical vulnerability. The central control node operated on a specific frequency that could be jammed by the Blackfin's electronic warfare systems. But the jamming would only work if the submarine positioned itself within 500 yards of the target, well within range of enemy weapons. The Blackfin approached the enemy communication node under cover of an underwater thermal layer that masked their acoustic signature. Michael guided the submarine through a minefield of sensors and detection systems, using every technique Sarah had taught him about underwater stealth operations. The crew worked in complete silence, communicating only through hand signals. Sarah watched from her fishing boat as naval forces searched for her across the Pacific. She knew that revealing her location would clear her name, but would also expose the Blackfin's mission to enemy intelligence. She chose to remain hidden, allowing her reputation to suffer rather than compromise her brother's safety. The moment of truth arrived as the Blackfin reached jamming position near the enemy communication node. Michael activated the electronic warfare systems, sending powerful interference signals that disrupted the enemy's underwater network. Enemy submarines across the Pacific suddenly found themselves cut off from their coordination system. Commander Harrison seized the opportunity created by the communication disruption. The Blackfin launched a coordinated strike with other Allied submarines that had been positioned for the operation. Enemy submarines found themselves isolated and vulnerable, unable to call for support or coordinate their defenses. The success of the mission vindicated Harrison's decision to violate orders, but it came at a personal cost. The commander knew that his naval career was effectively over, regardless of the mission's success. Military discipline required consequences for disobeying direct orders, even when those violations produced positive results. Michael's role in the mission's success became clear as intelligence analysts examined the data he had gathered. His discovery of the enemy communication network had provided the key to disrupting enemy operations across the Pacific. But he also faced investigation for his sister's disappearance and his own failure to report her suspicious activities. The aftermath of the mission brought recognition and controversy in equal measure. The Blackfin's crew received commendations for their courage and skill, but Commander Harrison faced a court-martial for violating orders. The success of the mission influenced the proceedings, but military justice demanded accountability. Sarah finally revealed her location after the mission's completion, turning herself in to naval authorities who had spent weeks searching for her. She faced charges of desertion and theft of classified materials, but her true motives became clear during the investigation. Her sacrifice had enabled one of the most successful submarine operations of the war. The siblings were reunited under circumstances neither had anticipated. Michael testified on Sarah's behalf, explaining how her expertise had guided his own work and contributed to the mission's success. Their grandfather's lessons about family loyalty and military duty had shaped both of their choices during the crisis. The final resolution came months later, when both siblings received recognition for their contributions to naval operations. Sarah was cleared of espionage charges, but faced discipline for abandoning her post. Michael continued his submarine service with a deeper understanding of the moral complexities of military life. Commander Harrison's court-martial resulted in his retirement from active duty, but he remained proud of his decision to complete the mission. The Blackfin's violation of orders had prevented a major enemy offensive and saved countless Allied lives. The price of success had been high, but the crew never regretted their choice. The story became legend within the submarine service, inspiring discussions about duty, loyalty, and the courage to make difficult decisions. Sarah's silent departure from the Warship had set in motion events that demonstrated the best qualities of naval service, even when those qualities conflicted with strict military discipline. Years later, the Chen siblings continued to serve their country in different capacities, their bond strengthened by the crisis they had survived together. Their story reminded everyone who heard it that the greatest victories sometimes come from the courage to violate orders when conscience demands a higher loyalty.